Today I've been fitting a King's 12-inch lethal single row light bar that does actually come with a splitter, just in case you want to run two light bars, but I won't be using the splitter today. I will be fitting it to my 2012 Subaru. So for it to be legal, and there is a good tutorial that they run on YouTube, but the Subaru Outback runs H9 Highbeam, and the adapter that came with it was not for H9. So what I ended up doing was actually cutting my Highbeam wires, and because it only has to be one, and then re-splitting. So that means that the light bar could be taken off and it would just leave this plug here. So that's actually not a big deal. So I've actually mounted the relay and the kit. You can probably just see in there on the side, making sure that the boot bonnet isn't going to come down and foul with any of that. And I've given myself a good amount of lead to be able to come down onto the battery. So that feeds off down to the light bar down here, the orange plug. So I've just fed that, and I've still got to sort of tidy it up, but the other end has to go in. So I've run it around and clipped it in and taken it inside the cabin. I haven't worked out exactly where in the cabin I'm going to put it, but there is on the Subaru an entry point on that bung there. So if you flip that out with a screwdriver and then just make a hole in that, and then what you do is you undo your plugs after you take a photo of them for polarity and switching, and then you feed that through. So then it comes through, and I've tucked it up underneath here and then brought it down to here for now. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to put it. I may put it into that little area there. Sorry for the mess, which is why I've got all this crap out. So I'm having a look at that. But for now, I've just run it to there, and I've managed to get it through the firewall, which would have come in up behind here. You can actually get up there, and I just grabbed a coat hanger and found it, and then I just pulled it down. So the third lead that comes out of your relay is the high beam sensor, and then that, of course, will just plug into there, and then I'll tidy that cord up. So basically, cord 1 goes into the cabin for switching, cord 2 comes down to your high beam for high beam sensor, and then cord 3 is your orange one, which comes down here and is going to go to the light bar. My brother was kind enough to gift me one of these number plate holders, which is why I've got my number plate off. However, the distance between here and here is not the same as the end of the light bar if I were to use the traditional 90-degree brackets. So if it went sort of like that, it's not going to land on that spot. I would have to drill out new holes, and I'm not going to do that because they give you brackets for a second option, which is that option there. This option means that it actually bolts to, those bolts go onto here, and then this guy here sits inside there and attaches to the light bar, and then you adjust your beam pivot with that. I hope all of this is making sense. So the question is, well then how does, and I might just try and come into the light for you a bit, how does this guy attach onto here? You can see where that's the runner for it, but how in the heck does it go on there? Well, there are no instructions, and that's why I'm doing this video for you. But basically what you do is you run your hex bolt through there, and you put a little nut on the end of it, and then what you do is, if I can just get that in with one hand, I'd be happy. That'll do. That's inside there, and then what you do is you thread that in with the nut underneath, you bring that in, and then what you do is you just tighten it up. Okay, so what it means is I've just very carefully taken the end off the light bar. 4 hex, off it comes. I have no idea what that is, but anyway, there's no cabling or anything on the other side of that, so you just very carefully take that off. You put your bolts through, put your little nuts on the other end, and then you just thread that through, and it bites in quite well, so you just tighten that up wherever your gap is, and then that's how you get it on. But as I say, there were no instructions for that, so that's why I'm recording. So there's the brackets mounted onto the number plate bracket holder, and as you can see under here, they're just the right size, and I've used some washers. I did make sure that I accounted for the washers. I do like how they've designed this to lock the head in, so all it means now is I just get a socket set onto that, and I will tighten that up, making sure that these guys are squared off. And then what I need to do from then is make sure that the brackets here come out. My goodness, I actually don't think that's going to work. I don't think, even if I bring that out to there, that it's actually going to work for me. Look at that. Wow. So this is what you learn when you get to this point. So what that means is that I am going to have to drill some holes in this to mount it. Maybe I should have gone for a wider light bar, but no, this was a good bargain. All right, all that means is that I get to use my drill press. So I'm trying to work here, but of course the cat has just seen something and has decided that it wants to chase it up the wall. So no matter how many times I put it down, he keeps wanting to get up there. What are you looking for, Willie? Hey? So my bolts are 270 apart. This one is 370 for the whole plate, which means that all I had to do was come in 50 on each side because there was a delta of 100. And I've just gone and drilled some new holes. This is very, very soft metal, this aluminium, and I've managed to absolutely get that correct. Sorry for the upside down photo. So I'm going to take my bolts off now and then mount it on there. Then I'm going to take my plate across and mount that onto the front of the car and take it from there. We're into the last part now. What I've done is I've run my red wire around and under this cover. I've had to clip out a bit of this cover to let it in. And then here's my negative wire here that goes to the negative side of the battery. And they run up here to the relay. Now it can go direct to the battery because we've got this fuse here. So that makes the whole solution acceptable, and that's the way that they designed it. The light bar is now mounted. There's even black ones of these, so if you want to change out the blue for black, you can. But I'm not going to worry about that at this stage. That's all pretty sturdy. And what I've done is I've run my cable down in behind the number plate, and then it just tucks in underneath there, and it goes in behind and connects. The connection is actually behind. So if ever it had to be, the bumper bar ever had to come off, you can just disconnect that behind there. Right, so I've started the car, headlights on, high beam on. Now what should happen is when I flick this switch, I should get a red light, and I do. And the inside of the garage is looking very bright. And so there we are, high beam with the light bar on. Now, what I do need to test to make sure that I'm compliant is that it goes out when I turn the high beam off.